137, verses 1 through 4. By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. There on the poplars we hung our harps, for there our captors asked us for songs. Our tormentors demanded songs of joy. They said, "Sing us one of the songs of Zion." How can we sing the songs of the Lord while in a foreign land? From Micah chapter 6, verses 6 to 8. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm going to invite Sam if you'd like to come up front and join me so we can have a bit of a yarn together. Welcome.
Kanji Galang Nara.
Galang Nara. It's like
So my language is like Galang Nurundai, and then in Kabyle it's a Nara.
Galang.
Galang Nurundai.
Okay, well, let's do some teaching here. I'm going to give you the opportunity tonight to teach us how to say it properly. So if you say it, and then hopefully the congregation will return the greeting.
A lot of people say Wanya or Wenya or Wonyi because it means where. So in the old days, the old people would wave out to you and they say, where are you coming from? So they always say Wanya or Wenya. But to say hello in Kabi, you say Nara.
Nara.
And where are you coming from? So Wanya.
Wanya.
And then often say Naranji.
Nalanji.
Means hello, and we've greeted you onto our country and done that in return.
Thank you.
That's all right, thank you.
So Sam, you are the painter of this beautiful painting, I believe. And it tells the story of what happened at Burning Creek, and with your permission, we'll go into that story a little bit later in the conversation. But you've already taught me something this morning with your language, and my language is I'm originally from Belfast in the UK. Sam actually sent me a greeting this morning, and he said top of the morning to you. So this whole conversation works on two levels.
But I tell him he didn't respond because I think in his culture he's meant to say, keep the rest of the day for yourself.
In my defence, I was driving at the time, so I was unable to respond. So as I said, I am from the UK, and my heritage is Irish or Northern Irish or Celtic. I had an uncle who actually traced our heritage all the way back to the Vikings and the Norsemen and the French and the Germans. So the Irish have been conquered and reconquered so many times that in many ways we don't actually know who we are anymore. But it's very different for you. You're from Gubbi Gubbi or Kabi Kabi. I'm new to this area. Can you help me understand the difference between Gubbi Gubbi and Kabi?
In short, the difference is, it's like some people would say kangaroo, some people would say gangaroo. So some people would say kabi kabi, some people would say gubbi gubbi. Some people would say kulum, some would say kalam, kuri kuri. So it depended on whether you're saltwater people or inland people, whether the way they heard things. P and B was the same too. We'd say baba for dad, or some would say papa. So it's like papa, papa, papu, bapu. Yeah, same.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, pronunciation makes a lot of sense whenever you start to understand. It was interesting that you talked about salt water and inland and that delineation, which is something that I certainly wouldn't have thought of. But the story of the Gubbi Gubbi people, could you tell me a little bit more of what that is?
Okay, so the Kabi Kabi people and Gubbi Gubbi people, so my beautiful wife down the back, she's
Can we have the next slide, please?
she's Kabi Kabi through her great grandmother Lily Agnes, got taken back to Vanuatu through the White Australia policy. And actually a lot in the community today, you see the difference in our skin colours. Often people who are blacker than us in the Aboriginal community is because their families married South Sea Islanders to hide. And those of us who are fairer skin, we married white people to hide when it was illegal to be Aboriginal. So the Gubbi Gubbi country originally went from Yandina in the corner there, which my children share all that history. Then it goes right up to Elliot Heads on the corner there. And then my wife's family are also this clan here, Tarling Barlin, which is the Bundaberg people. So that was the original Gubbi Gubbi country right there. I come from this clan grouping here called the Undumbi, which goes from the Pine River all the way to Stewers Creek.
That's
That's right.
I've had a number of conversations, even though I've only been here in this congregation for a few months. And every one of those conversations always comes back to one issue that you always share with me, and it's a story that I love hearing. It's the story of your spirituality and how it is so similar to that of Christianity. And please excuse the very poor pronunciation of an Irishman in Australia trying to use a pronunciation of a first language. Of First Nations. The story of Undamna. Undamna? A-N-I or is it Undamni?
Undumbi.
Undamni. Could you share that with me, please?
Oh, just quickly before we go there, this country that we're actually on right now, with this broken border with Gubbi Gubbi that came in later times, was the original people of the Dullingburra, and that went up to Fraser Island, Noosa Heads, that side of Doonan, all the way down to Stewers Creek, which was Perugian. And this is the land of the Dullingburra people, the Nautilus Shell people here. So this is Uncle John Dullungallee Jones's country, and he's the main family that are the traditional owners of through this section of Noosa. My family, they originated, like I just said, from the Pine River, all the low-lying country, right up to the Pine River, all the way up there to the low-lying country there. Then right up into the back of Doonan on this side. And Stewers Creek used to go around Grays Road in Doonan, not far from where I live, and it used to wrap back down to Perugian, and that was Undumbi country. So my uncle talks about our connection to the South Sea Islands when we married Islander people. Undumbi, which is our family elder, Tyus Gorilla Rundumbi. Rundumbi means Aboriginal man, South Sea Islander man, Aboriginal woman, where the salt meets the fresh. So the mixing of the two. But before that, we were the black man. Dan means black in our language. And we were the black men of this place. So it was called Undan and Danby. That was our clan. We had 3 clans inside: Yinabara, Jundabari, and the Ningi Ningi. I belong to the Yinabara and I belong to the Ningi Ningi. Yinabara are Coolum, down to say Maroochydore, Balulaba, and then Caloundra back down to sort of Redcliffe was more your Ningi people with the town Ningi, which means oyster. So yeah.
Thank you.
That's right.
And the story, so you talked about Undamni as the language group or the language of the area, but Undamni is spiritual.
So yeah, so the spiritual, so there's a great war mentioned in a book, if you ever get a chance to read, called The Fire in the Outback. And it's about a revival up in Elcho Island, up in that sort of country, up near Weeper and all that on the Cape. And there was a great war once upon a time with the Kuris and the Guris, and they say it was a religious type of war because some clans believed in the rainbow serpent. For some of us was basically the devil. If you didn't worship him, you'd eat your children. And some of us worshipped Bayami. And Bayami, he breathed on the dust. He made the first man and woman. They killed a kangaroo rat they weren't meant to kill. He cried and he needed a way to bring his children back, so he put the Southern Cross in the sky so his children would come back through Gunjal Mirrabooka, his son, like the Jesus story. so much was this story revered that we had a reverend from the Lutheran Church called William Bradley. William Radley, sorry. Some call him Ridley, some call him Radley, but he was German. And he came out here and he read our Bible stories from northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland. He read our Dreamtime stories and the Bible, and when he did the translation, he used our names for God to create the Gamilaroi language Bible and the Dipal language Bible. So in Ngumbi we never spoke Kabi, we actually spoke the Turrbal language, which was more associated with the people of Brisbane and northern New South Wales.
Thank you for that, Sam. One of the things that, as I spoke with you before in preparation for this service, and you mentioned it before, that how people married to hide. And I think as we spoke, you talked to me and shared with me some of your story. And so I'd really like to ask you tonight, how did the arrival of the second peoples affect you personally?
Okay, yeah, so...
and I know that this can be a difficult story for you to share.
So, yeah, like you could say essentially, I'd just like to say here that so you all understand, this is just my version of the local story. There's many other people with their own versions of the story, and sometimes their stories are different, but everybody's got their own story. At the end of the day, each man's got a story. This is my story and this is my version of it. So, yeah, it was really hard for me. You could say I grew up essentially white. I grew up thinking I was white. You know, you grow up, things happen. We were treated coloured in a lot of ways. Like I was telling the story earlier. I remember being my son's age, 10 years old, and being accused of shoplifting in a store in Karoi, and absolutely bawling my eyes out because they knew that we were a coloured family in the area. And my dad actually happened to come down and actually get up the guy because he was accusing me, and I didn't realise what it was. We didn't know. Again, I remember being pulled up by police with my cousin Italian Parolini. He was pulled up to, you know, his background check was done on his family. He was all good, the other one. But Jones, you're one of them half-caste Jones boys from Pine River, Sunshine Coast, straight away interrogated what was I doing. I become the question of what we were doing all of a sudden. So I'd seen these little things growing up. My lifestyle and bringing up was very sheltered and tame. I had brothers that were, you know, drug addicts and gangsters and car thieves and all the rest of it. And we didn't understand what it was, but my father grew up North Brisbane, Pine River, you know, Caloundra area, and a lot of his cousins who didn't know were his cousins, the Dalton and the Cleary family, used to come up and just ask him, "Who's your mob? Where are you from?" He said, "No, I'm not black." He'd go home and ask Mum. And we grew up with black people all around the table, like we were as good as black, but we didn't know that we were. So my grandmother, she had one day, she was getting ready to move us back to Caloundra, where we were from, Kalawandra, the place of the beech trees. She was getting us to move from Kalanga to Caloundra, and all north of the Pine River, all in our country. And she had this desire to get back there before she died. And when we were packing up and moving, she had all the photos there, and she had the photo of my great-great-grandfather. And Willie Smith Sr. was our traditional full-blooded great-grandfather. He had a son and a daughter, and the daughter was Polly Smith, where Uncle Tyus comes from, and Willie Jr. is where Dad comes from, that's why they're cousins. And anyways, I had this photo of my old great-grandfather there, and I said to Nana, "Who's this old man in the picture?" And she said, "That's my grandfather, that's your great-grandfather." And I said, "No, it's not, Nana." And she looked at me, and we had asked all these questions all the time, and I knew enough about anthropology and researching and, you know, what Aboriginal people look like. And she goes, "Well, we always knew he was descended from Aboriginals in the area. Dad's 50 years old, his mouth drops." We're like, "What?" My Nana storms off to the kitchen, throws her hands up and goes, "I wish I never told you." Now you're just going to carry on about it. So we've been taken, spiritually broken from our connection to land, culture, country, and all that sort of thing. And that was the point that I was first introduced to it at 16.
that's heartbreaking for me to sit here and hear. And it leads into the story of your painting, actually, I think, in terms of that brokenness. And as I was doing some research, one of the stories that I find was that it was white settlers who were coming down the river who were murdered at Murder Creek. But your story is very different to that. I think your story is probably more accurate. And then in the 6 panels, I think you have the story of what actually happened. So would you like to share with us the story of the 6 panels?
Yeah, I'll just try and get through that real quickly. So the story you mentioned come out of a gazette, and apparently, a boat come down and some Aboriginals came out, Darlingborough people come out with spears and speared all the Europeans in the boat. Very different story to what went on. So what we have here, and if you can see up the top in the first panel, is we have a young Darlingborough man looking out over at the bullocky, the cow, and he sees a nice easy feed. And there was a famous painting which you can see on the internet, and that's a picture of no blackfellow, spear bullocky, or you end up hanging in the tree. So there's a picture of that. Then it's said that Sir Chippendale, he came over from Yandina Creek Station, so over on that Cubby country. He came over and he had 8 hired men. So there was a war. I like to tell people this to realise that it wasn't just Europeans got out one day and decided they were going to kill a whole bunch of First Nations people, Aboriginal people. What it was is there was a war going on from 1788, say 1800s to 1901. So it took 100 years to defeat us. We actually had full-on guerrilla warfare, and we had warriors and we had soldiers that fought for this land. And how they got us in the end was they got us through missions. They bred us white. Lord Neville Howlett, Chief Protectors of the Aborigines, which you've seen the movie Rabbit Proof Fence, said, by 6 generations invariably I've hoped to have raised all physical characteristics of the Australian Aborigine. Well, here I am, a white Jewish Aboriginal with blonde hair. There you go, they achieved that statement. And so here we have 8 hired men. Chippendale said to have got 8 hired men. One disturbing story says it was a Sunday shooting after church. I struggle with that story, being a believer. There's many different versions, but who knows what they're up to. From what I've mostly researched, I don't think these guys were coming from church. They look like Britain's finest redcoats in white hats, settled on the pasture to me. They're at Yandina Creek Station there with the piccabean pumps. This is what it looks like. This is taken from an actual photo. They go here, they go to our place of the Yaya, Wayaba. They go to this Lake Waiba here, which is quite shallow. I don't know how it was in those days. One settler goes in the middle and he acts as a decoy and all the clan come in to see what's going on. They're curious as to why he's pretending he can't swim. They come there, they shoot everybody. They say they massacred a whole tribe in one day. Often white people say, where are the people of Noosa? I think a lot of them got shot. The few survivors, Uncle John Dulumdallee Jones, he's one of the one families left of that pure bloodline from that area. Then we go to the over-commercialisation of Noosa. We've got pineapples, the big pineapple, we've got the high-rises, we've got beach and surf and beautiful tropicalness that we have in our surround, subtropical region. Then we go to the last scene here, and this is my dream, for the sons of Ham and the sons of Yapeth to come together and dance as one. For all of us black and white, red, brindle, galvanised in between to come together as one.
Okay, thank you for that, Sam. There's a number of other features that are around, and I know from my own research of different Aboriginal groups that they're tied to particular elements, some to land, some to water, some to creatures. But one of the significant features, it's not really that big on the picture, but it's this little shell up here. I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, just a real quick rundown. You got 3 words around Noosa. You got Doonathan, which I'm native to on that southern end. Doonathan, place of leaves. Then you got Nusatherian, which is place of shadows, or one Kabi say one Tima, place of rising. Then you also have Tewantin here, which is place of dead logs, Dunathan, place of them old floating trees and the dead logs. So you got Karoi, the possum there, so that's to represent Karoi. You got Perugian over here, Perugian, Wandaloo, the emu, and the mountain there. And then you got Mount Coolum right there where I come from. So that's where I live and we make boomerangs. But the main feature, which Neil just asked about here, that's the dalang. Now this shield design, which we've got Boreen Point over here, Boreen or Hammond refers to the shield. That shield design comes from Fraser Island, Gari and Noosa people there. And this is the dalang, the nautilus shell. And this shell was very important. It was traded all the way to my ancestors out in the desert, the Aranda people. And they would use this, the big men of the clan would actually use it. They would trade it for marriage. And it was a very special shell. There's two places in the world, they say, I think my wife's village in Pungo village and Noosa, or two of the places, there might be a few others, where that shell washes up as a whole entity onto the beach and people find it. Otherwise you've got to dive for it, but it actually swims and lands on the beach in Noosa. So, yeah.
Wow. So this is, I know I've asked you this question already this morning, and I really do appreciate you giving us your time to do this again. The Uniting Church in Australia has a covenant with the Uniting Aboriginal Islander Christian Congress, and we work very cooperatively with them as second peoples to try and understand what it's like as First Nations peoples. And as you're well aware, there's a huge debate going on in the past few days about stores selling Australia Day merchandise and not selling Australia Day merchandise. Do we have Australia Day on January 26th? What days do we celebrate or commemorate, or Invasion Day? And all of those play in together. But I'd like to take it back to your story again and ask you, as a First Nations person, what would you like to see happen next?
Yeah, well, just one thing my father asked me to share on my way up here, which is I need to share just quickly, just back on that story. So Grandad Willie Smith had a daughter called Lizzie Phillips, and that's where Dad comes from. And they recently brought out a movie called Sound of Silence with Jim Caviezel, who was in The Passion of the Christ, when Mel Gibson said to him, "You'll never work again in Hollywood after you undertake this role." And my great-grandmother, Lizzie, Dad grew up with Anna. She actually was they called her an indentured servant, but she was basically sold to a Scottish Greek family as, just sold to them basically as a
slavery under another name.
Slavery under another name. You've got young years here, you can put the things together. And she was sold off to my great-grandfather, who Dad grew up as Granddad. We were sort of, had 14 children. He was 21 and she was 13 and 14 when they got married. And so that was not that long ago. That was my father's grandmother, was sold off, brought from the missions to that family. Then such shame was then brought on that young girl that she was then made to marry the son of the family. And I'm not telling you these stories to make you feel sorry for us, but what I'm telling these stories for is I just told another story that really brought me to tears. I went to work on Tuesday. I work in the prisons. I teach certificate 2 and 3 in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural arts. And I had a young fella, cousin there, songman, who's in ICU. He got let out. Big family member, he asked me, "Cousin, can you come teach us to dance? And we want to revive all this stuff out at Sherburg." And he's in ICU because what happened was he got let out of prison, couldn't adjust, went on a bender, and then he wrapped himself around a tree. And this story is happening more and more with our people. So we've got these arguments about Australia Day, yes vote, no vote, all these different things. What's happened is, and if we can be kind to each other and help fix by just being kind when you meet people, because people are going through a lot of hard times, what it is our people have been spiritually disconnected from our culture. The first thing that the European went out after was to take us away from our God. The first thing was to remove us from our history and our land. So they broke a spiritual connection. They gave back a very fractured version of that, which in a sense was the same creator with a different culture. They gave back the church. And like I was saying earlier, all our people know today that when they see them red eyes in the bush, the first thing they do is they run back to what Nana taught them in the church, because they know there's power in the name of Jesus. They know there's power in the Son of God who came to heal us and restore us. So, yeah, I think it's become into really interesting times, and a lot of people fear. They go, oh, you know, what if the Aboriginals take my house back? Well, Aboriginal people aren't after your house. Aboriginal people are after land parcels that belong to the Crown, which is stolen, to bring back to them so that the people can recome. Like, again, apart from it being a special day and my family here and a few others, there's no real Dullingborough or Cubby or Undumby people coming into church. Why? Because of that broken disconnection. How do we get them back? Through that love and that kindness and just nurturing people back and coming together in that reconciliation to what can we do? How can we involve you? Can we give you a place, like Sunshine have done a good job, you know, can we give you a place to do a yarning circle? So a place where someone with autism or all this transgenerational trauma, which we have a lot in our community, black and white, galvanised all over, they can come, they can sit and they can heal. They can talk to the reverend, they can talk to people in the congregation, they can share and they can go, yeah, that bad stuff's happened, yeah, that pain and all that suffering's happened and it's real, but what are we doing to move on and how can we move on? So for me, that's a big one. Australia Day is just a quiet day. We go to the beach. If someone goes past an Australian flag, I don't have a fight with them. I say, g'day mate, how are you going? Are you having a good day? It's just another ordinary day for me. I don't get bent up on whether we should celebrate it on what day. I mean, if you look at the history of it, I'm new to the country, Australia Day has happened on about 5 different dates. So it's quite confusing in itself. But yeah, thank you.
So, thank you very much for sharing your time with me this morning. And more importantly, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.